Good evening. We welcome you to tonight's debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. My name is Diana Dakey, our current League's president. We want to thank Old Forge School District for hosting tonight's debate, and Frank Scavo in particular, a former school board president, for working with us to make these local arrangements happen. Just to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, which means that we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation by citizens in their government. We encourage you to join the League of Women Voters. Membership information can be found in our program, and or you can go to our website, which is www.leagueofwomen.lwvlackawanna.org. And please support our work by making a donation on your way out. Donations help us cover the costs, including taping, so that the debates can be viewed by a wider audience. And Ann and Alan will be at the doors on your way out, and we would appreciate any small donation that you would feel comfortable giving to us. ECTV is taping tonight's debate. This is not a live broadcast. The taped debate will be aired on Comcast 19 local TV, so please check the ECTV schedule, which can be found on our website. And the taped debate will also be available on YouTube via links from our website. Once again, our website is www.lwvlackawanna.org. As far as upcoming events, if anybody is in the audience who is in a different legislative district, or if you are in the 22nd Senatorial District, we have upcoming debates, and they are all listed in your program. But the most important event is Election Day, Tuesday, November 4th, so please don't forget to vote. Then you can join us later that evening on TV for election returns via live broadcast from ECTV when Andrea Mulreen and other guests will be discussing the outcome of the election. So just a few procedural items for the audience. Please turn off or silence your phones or other devices. And please be aware that it is our policy that no person, candidate, or political group is allowed to use or edit any media from a League of Women Voters event for campaign purposes. Any use of the media requires the express written permission of the League of Women Voters. So no excerpts or sound bites may be taken from tonight's debate or debate or discussion. So tonight's debate is between candidates for the 114th Pennsylvania Legislative District, and Andrea Mulreen will serve as moderator for tonight's debate. Andrea will introduce the candidates. Andrea is presently employed by the Commonwealth Medical College as Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations, and she's the past president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, a position in which she served for many, many years. And she's currently still on our board, and we're very pleased for her ongoing leadership. With that, I will turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you, Diana. And welcome everyone here. We're pleased to be here. Thank you to the Old Forge School District for allowing us to use their venue this evening. We truly appreciate their support. Our two candidates, welcome to our candidates, and thank you for your commitment to democracy and for being here with us this evening. First, I'll introduce our Democratic candidate, Sid Michael Kavulich. He is a resident of Taylor, graduate of Riverside High School and Williamsport Community College with an associate degree in broadcasting. He's presently serving his second term in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. He worked in broadcasting, including 21 years at WBRE, WYOU. He's the former general manager for St. Anne's Media at St. Anne's Basilica in Scranton, a former communications specialist for the Pennsylvania Democratic Senate Communications Office, and he has served on several boards as well. Melanie Madeira, welcome Melanie, is our Republican candidate. She is a resident of Music, a graduate of Dallas High School and Kutztown University with a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education. She has been a campaign volunteer and manager for several campaigns, including managing a 14-county congressional campaign for her husband, David Madeira. She has been a teacher, including both formal homeschool and tutoring, excuse me, a writer and blogger for the David Madeira Show, and a content writer for a digital agency. So welcome again to both of our candidates this evening. The format for tonight is that will be approximately a 60-minute debate. The candidates will answer the same set of questions, and no questions were given to them in advance. All questions will have a 90-second response limit, and each candidate will be allowed up to 3 rebuttals of 1 minute each. They can use the full 3 minutes at one time if desired, but I told them, no phone a friend, no lifeline, no holding it all for the end. That's the way it goes. And then each candidate, there are no opening statements, but each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement. So with that, let us get right into the debate. We did draw names, or X's as the case would be, before we got started, and Sid will answer the first question first, and then Melanie will answer the second question first. So we'll kind of go in a round robin as we go through this. And I'm going to start right out with something that is on the minds of everybody, I think, in Pennsylvania government, and that pertains to ethics. So Sid, what does it mean to be a public servant who acts ethically? And is there a difference between what is legal and what is ethical? You've got 90 seconds.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and also to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us the opportunity, my opponent and myself, to discuss the issues for everyone to have the opportunity to hear us. Ethics is an extremely important part of government. Ethics, integrity, honesty. I think that it's important for elected officials to be open. I think it's important for elected officials to be transparent. And I think that the highest form of honesty and integrity and ethical conduct is mandatory and essential for elected officials. And as we have seen in the past, what happens when elected officials take advantage of their position, take advantage of their office, and they go before the courts, they go before the legal system, and we see just what happens when elected officials lose sight of just what they are elected for. And I think we all have a duty, and it's essential that we be ethical, honest, and have integrity.
Thank you. Melanie, the question goes to you, and you have 90 seconds.
I think that the way, part of the most important part of that question is how you are ethical. How do you represent yourself as ethical? And it's really one of the reasons why I waited so long to be a candidate, and why I stayed, on the backside of politics, management, and strategy side, because I was very happy being at home with my children. It was a season in my life, and homeschooling them and tutoring children, because I think that what helps keep you ethical is learning what your rudder is in life, and making sure that no matter what happens in your life, when you get knocked down or you have good times, that rudder stays true. And you can't really know how that rudder is going to affect your life unless you go through it. And I think that a lot of times when people get involved in politics too early, they don't really know what that rudder is. And so I wanted to take my time to experience life, so that when you go to Harrisburg, you know what your rudder is. You know what that compass tells you to do. And I think that says more about a candidate's character and how they've represented, how they've lived their life. That's how they will represent.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on now to something that kind of speaks to ethics, and that's about a gift ban. So over the past decade, Pennsylvania government has been overwhelmed by a train of scandals, as we all know, many tied to campaign contributions and gifts. Recent polls of Pennsylvanians show that between 71% and 93% support banning lobbyists and others seeking public policy outcomes from giving gifts, hospitality, entertainment, and travel to government officials and employees. And according to the National Conference of State Legislators, Pennsylvania is one of only 10 states that has no limit on gifts. 10 states actually have full gift bans. 30 states restrict gift giving in some way, shape, or form. What is your position on gifts being given to legislators by lobbyists and others seeking public policy outcomes? And Melanie, you get the question first.
I think it's bizarre. I think that it's really bizarre that in Pennsylvania we allow that because, I mean, if somebody offers a legislator a diamond bracelet, which is one of the stories that transpired in Philadelphia, how is that supposed to, how is that ethical? We just talked about ethical and having a rudder in your life. And receiving a gift like that, whether or not you are an ethical person, it just smacks of cronyism and political gift giving and vote getting and and political favoring. So I can't even fathom that we can allow that. Just on the face of it, it looks bad. But underneath, we know what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, it's really, somebody gets a diamond bracelet and you're not going to be motivated to at least show partiality to a person. It's just crazy. It's something that has to be done away with in Pennsylvania.
Okay, Sid, the question to you.
I can't see how you are not influenced as not only a legislator, but in everyday life by someone who showers you with gifts or showers you with favors. And I think that Pennsylvania should have a total gift ban. I know there's a lot of people who hand out mugs and they hand out ink pens and things of that sort, but if you have a total gift ban, then you have a total freedom of having any influence on a vote or anything that a legislator might do in Harrisburg. And to take that a step further, I even think that we should have limits on campaign spending, because if every candidate was allowed to spend the same amount and raise only a certain amount, then we wouldn't have big business, we wouldn't have big contributors giving thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to candidates who then are able to go out and outspend an opponent. And actually, if you had the same spending limits, then in any of your campaigning, you would have to run on your own merits instead of turning it into a mudslinging and a rock-throwing campaign. So I think we should have a total gift ban and campaign contribution and spending limits.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on and talk a little bit now about property tax reform. And Sid, this question will go to you first. So there is a drive to replace property taxes with a combination of a higher state sales tax and state income tax. House and Senate Bill 76 is one such proposal that's currently on the table, and it would raise the state personal income tax by 1.27%, increase state sales tax by 1%, place sales tax on some previously untaxed items, and abolish the authority of school boards to levy property taxes. So with all of that, what do you see as the pros and cons of the proposed bill, and do you support something along those lines? So again, Sid, to you first.
First of all, I'd like to say that I am a co-sponsor on House Bill 76, and I did vote to get it out of Finance Committee in the House of Representatives. But it doesn't mean that the bill is perfect. I believe that there is still work that is needed to be done on House Bill 76, or whatever incarnation it takes. But first of all, in regards to eliminating totally property tax, if you completely eliminate property tax for everyone, you have to do it across the board. You can't just do it for residents, senior citizens, and then forget about the so-called big box stores or big business. It has to be eliminated for everyone, and that's my concern. Maybe something in terms of a graduated property tax we could look at. Or when you talk about the sales tax, I like the idea of an increased sales tax, because then it's spread out across the board. Everybody shares the burden. It's not just property owners as opposed to not renters. It's the homeowner, it's the big box store owner. So it's spread out across the whole spectrum. But right now, in House Bill 76 has an imbalance. If we eliminate property tax, the revenue producers in that bill still leave a gap of about $1.5 billion. So it still needs work. I voted to bring it out of Finance Committee, to get it to the floor so that we can have discussion on it, that we can amend the bill, and we could move on it because we need to eliminate, or at least eliminate the burden on property tax owners.
Okay. Melanie, the question to you.
Two things that I'd like to address with this issue. First of all, I absolutely agree we have to have property tax elimination. I lost my home 4 years ago. We lost our business because of the economy. I don't want to see anyone else lose their home. It's the most painful thing you can go through. And I will fight as hard as I can to make sure that that is not going to happen to anyone else. So the first thing that we need to address is that why do we have to pay so much money for schools? In Pennsylvania, we're paying almost $15,000 a student. It's $2,000 higher than the national average, according to the Washington Post. We did a comparison of all 50 states. So I think that we have enough money for our schools. We're spending more money in Pennsylvania history on education than ever before. So why isn't that enough money? And we're requiring more money from a smaller and smaller pool of people every year. And property owners keep shrinking every year. And so we have to address, first of all, why isn't that enough money? It is, but where is it going? Why isn't it being spent wisely? The second thing I want to address is, because I do think that spreading out the cost of schools across the board in a state sales tax, first of all, it's much harder to raise a state sales tax, so if they try to raise that again, they have to convince the entire state to do it, not just a community, which is a good thing. But one of the criticisms is that raising the state sales tax affects the poor. But here's my counter argument to that. It actually helps the poor, because as we reduce the burden on property owners, we'll have more property owners because they can afford to buy homes. They can afford to keep their homes. The more property that people own, the more blue-collar jobs we have, the more electricians we have, the more plumbers we have, the more builders we have, roofers. The list goes on and on and on. And that's what Lackawanna County needs. We need more jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that follows along actually with the next part of my question, and I'm going to come back to education in a minute. But Melanie, you get to answer this question first. So we talked about taxes, and now let's talk about exactly what you were mentioning, which is how do you get the money to pay your taxes, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about jobs. Where do you think the jobs of the future will be in Pennsylvania, and what can Harrisburg do directly or indirectly to incentivize job creation?
The number one thing is utilizing the Marcellus shale industry. We have literally gold under our feet. And if we can either, kill this industry by a death of 1,000 cuts, or we can say, hey, let's utilize this. We can't do a lot of drilling per se in Lackawanna County, just like Luzerne County. There's not a lot of gas to be utilized here. But because of our location, we are in the perfect location in the Northeast here with all of the highway systems going right through our county. And we have the perfect infrastructure to build upon adjunct industries to the gas industry in terms of, I could foresee that we could easily be the gas filling station capital of the Northeast. I mean, we're the corridor to all of New England. We could be the personal vehicle conversion capital of the state. I mean, these are good paying jobs. These are businesses that people can own and make good jobs, good livelihoods for their families. And so I absolutely feel that if we tax this industry more than it is, because it's already being taxed, and I'm sure we're going to get into that more later.
Next.
Yes, we will. But these are great paying jobs. Lackawanna College is doing a fabulous job in their program. They're having students graduate getting jobs $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year right here in Lackawanna County.
Okay, Sid, the question goes to you now.
And I'd like to say my alma mater, which is now Penn Tech, Williamsport Community College, is also another college that is, and I agree with that. This is, it could all start with the shale and the shale gas, as long as the jobs are given to Pennsylvania people. And we also have to remember that we need family-sustaining jobs. We can't create jobs that are service jobs and retail jobs. We need jobs whereby people can raise a family and be able to have a good roof over their heads, be able to put food on the table, and again, be able to raise a family adequately. And again, we talk about the economy. We do have an ideal spot here in the Northeast with the highway system that we have, and then we talk about even trying to attract industry by dropping the corporate income tax or the corporate net income tax, which, by the way, I would agree to drop to approximately 5.9 or 6.9, since we have one of the highest in the country. But we also need to attach conditions to tax breaks and lowering that corporate net income tax. We have to, if we're going to grant tax breaks, we've got to make sure that the people receiving the tax breaks are going to create jobs, are going to create industry here in Pennsylvania. And we also have a wonderful Made in Pennsylvania program, which we should continue to nourish, we should continue to promote, and we should continue to boost here in this Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you. I do want to talk about drilling now, and Sid, you'll answer this question first. So let's just talk first about the tax. Do you support a severance tax on natural gas and other forms of natural resource extraction? And if Pennsylvania were to enact such a severance tax, how would you recommend the funds be used?
Well, first of all, I do agree with the severance tax. The impact fee affects largely the areas where the drilling is taking place. And for example, Clark Summit. The trucks are coming back and forth through Clark Summit and doing heavy damage to the roads. And so they are impacted also and do not get the full amount that they should get from that. Taylor is another one. We have the rail yards where they are being used for the drilling, and again, our roads and our bridges in Taylor. And again, I think they got Taylor, the borough, got less than $100 from the impact fee. I think a severance tax, a reasonable severance tax. We cannot tax the drillers out of Pennsylvania. A severance tax of 3 to 5%, I think, would be adequate because it is comparable to other drilling states, and I think that's important. I do not want to see an exorbitant severance tax. I think the drilling companies, before the impact fee was imposed, I visited some of the drilling companies and had a chance to see the sites and was told that they were prepared to pay a severance tax. They just wanted to know what that severance tax was going to be. And I think if we do get a severance tax, it's got to be spread out over the entire spectrum. We have a lot of problems in Pennsylvania with revenue, and I think between jobs, job creation, with education, there are a lot of areas whereby we can spread out a severance tax. But every day that we continue to have a lower impact fee continues to cost Pennsylvania in the Revenue Department.
Okay, thank you. Melanie, the same question to you.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to cover there. First of all, if we're going to be compared to other states, which everybody usually goes to Texas, it's a completely different, it's an apple and an orange. They have a completely different drilling system down there. They don't have a corporate income tax rate. They don't have all the taxes that we have here in Pennsylvania. So they don't, when they start drilling, they drill. They don't pay anything until that drill is making money, until they've actually paid the money back from that well, from drilling. And then the state starts to get money. We're actually better here by what we are doing, because once that drill hits the ground, Pennsylvania gets money. And I do think it's fair that the impact fee, the way it is, leaves 60% of that money in the host community. Look, they are providing, they're putting up with the road noise, they're putting up with the trucks. They're the host community providing a resource and heat and an energy source for the rest of the state, the rest of the world, for Pennsylvania to enjoy and reap the benefits. And I would just like to point out, if 100% of that money went to Harrisburg, do you really trust that you're going to see that money where you want to? Just like the casino money was supposed to come back and give us property tax relief, I'm just a little skeptical. We're going to see that money, and it's going to relieve Pennsylvanians.
Okay, thank you. Sid, you wanted to rebut?
Sure, I'd like to talk about the fact that the impact fee is being imposed, and it's pretty much on the whole. It's not being, the hole being drilled, and not being imposed on the gas that is being taken out of the ground. And now what's happening with some of the people that have contracted with the drilling companies, they're finding that production fees are being taken out. And some of these people are getting checks of $40, $50 and less. So what the drilling companies are doing to these people is an embarrassment, and it's a travesty. Also, out of state, if you go to a lot of the hotels in northeastern Pennsylvania, you see all of these out-of-state license plates where people from out of state are coming in and working here. I mean, we should keep these jobs in Pennsylvania. And lastly, the environment. I am so concerned about the environment. I lived in a neighborhood which was decimated by the extraction of a natural resource, coal. And I just think that if we are going to drill, it's got to be done safely. It's got to be done with the people of the Commonwealth in mind and with the environment in mind. And I think that is, when we talk about severance fee, severance tax, impact fee, jobs, I think environment is the most important thing because we have many more generations to come here in Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Melanie, you wanted to rebut?
Yes, I do. And yes, as drilling started off in the state, when we lived in Pittsburgh for a year and a half, I worked at a Holiday Inn Express, first as a cleaning lady and then as a front desk. My college degree really came in handy there. And but we had, because it was Pittsburgh, just outside of Pittsburgh, we had half of the hotel full all the time with employees from the industry. And they were from out of town. And so you see that here too. But the industry was new, so people have to be trained, people have to be taught. I mean, you just can't go out. It's not like taking a job cleaning in a hotel where you can learn it in and out. These are very precise, dangerous jobs that just can't be learned in a week. And so, yes, they brought in people from other states because they had to have people who knew the jobs, and now the jobs are going to Pennsylvanians because of the work that Lackawanna College is doing, because of the training that's going on with the companies. And I'd like to say that Pennsylvania is one of the best regulated states in the country in terms of watching over the industry. We're not going to be seeing anything like we had with the coal industry. I mean, we're more in danger from all of the gasoline stations on every corner where the tanks are above the water table than we are with fracking, which is well below the water table.
Thank you, Sid.
And I would just like to say quickly, yes, but DEP, the budget continues to get cut for DEP every year, and we have to make sure that if our Department of Environmental Protection is going to overlook this industry, we've got to give them the teeth and the resources and the ability to adequately oversee the industry.
Okay, I do want to talk about the environment now as it pertains to fracking. Melanie, you'll answer this question first. So I'm going to start with a little intro and then I'll ask the question. So methane leakage associated with natural gas drilling impacts air quality and threatens to undo the potential climate benefits of using natural gas in place of other fossil fuels. Earlier this year, Colorado adopted rules crafted by a coalition of energy companies and environmental groups that require oil and gas companies to use available technologies to reduce their methane emissions and other air pollution from their operations. And then there are other gas-producing states, including Ohio, which have begun to consider regulations based on this Colorado model as well. So here's my question after all of that. Realizing that Pennsylvania is one of the nation's largest and fastest growing natural gas producers, if elected or re-elected, would you support development of new rules that would require natural gas companies to employ cost-effective technologies and practices to reduce methane emissions? Melanie, that one goes to you.
I know that they already are. I had a conversation with some people over at Lackawanna College very recently, and they're really excited about the new technology that's coming out. They were showing me around and showing me the equipment, and they are already addressing this problem. So I'm always skeptical of saying, would you enact? Would you support legislation? Would you force? Because the more government gets involved, it just seems like the more it gets messed up. And I don't think that government always has to dictate what has to be. I think we have an industry that is already thinking ahead and saying, hey, it benefits us to have new technology, so let's keep investing, and they're doing that. And so I am always leery of saying we have to have more legislation because it always just gets so muddled up in the end.
Okay. Sid, the question goes to you now.
Andrea, I was ready to hold up the 90-second stop sign during that question. It was so long.
It's moderator's preference. I get to talk as long as I want.
Simple answer, absolutely. If Colorado has legislation that works and protects the environment, absolutely.
Okay. I want to talk now about economic development. We've talked a little bit about jobs, but I want to move on to the minimum wage, which certainly does have an impact on economic development. So again, now, Diana, you're going to have to time me on this because Sid's calling me out, okay? 23 states, including all of Pennsylvania's neighboring states, have raised the minimum wage over the past years. Pennsylvania's minimum wage remains at $7.25. The Times Tribune reported in October that more than 75,000 people in northeastern Pennsylvania, or about 20% of the workforce, labor for a minimum wage that has an inflation-adjusted value, making it roughly 23% lower in real dollars than it was in 1968. So the question, Sid, goes first to Melanie. No, I'm sorry, first to Sid. I need to write it down. The question for you is, the arguments for and against raising the minimum wage are well known. What is your position on increasing the state's minimum wage?
$7.25 an hour is impossible on which to raise a family, and I'm sure Melanie would agree with what her family has gone through. But when you look at a 40-hour job at $7.25 a week, it's about $300. And it's impossible. If you have one child or two children, it is absolutely impossible. I do feel that we need to raise the minimum wage, and it goes back to the service job, the minimum wage service and retail jobs, which are so flush in this area and in so many areas of Pennsylvania. We need family-sustaining jobs. We need family-sustaining wages. We need wages whereby people can raise a family comfortably and adequately. And also equal pay for equal jobs. I mean, there is no reason why a woman working today in the same job as a man should not get the same pay as a man. So I do agree that we need to raise the minimum wage, and I do agree that, we need to get it done now here in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Melanie, question to you.
I'm the daughter of a businessman. I was raised in a restaurant kitchen, yay hide or a grasshopper, and standing on a milk carton, cutting up food for my dad in this restaurant. And I learned what it was like to have to run a business, to pay employees, pay workers' compensation, keep your shelves stocked, keep your employees happy. I know the stress that it takes to be a business person. My husband and I ran a business for 20 years. I helped him run our business until he retired and we went into something else, and that all went completely. But we can't force business owners to say, oh, by the way, today, now you're paying everybody $10 an hour. Where do they come up with that money? I think it is essential that people have more experience what it's like to have to run a business and hire employees and bear the burdens of what it costs to run a business in Pennsylvania. There are a lot of burdens that people don't realize that business owners have to live with day in and day out. And I will not support telling business owners either that they have to face another reasonable tax to come up with more money, or now all of a sudden you have to pay your employees more. Where do they get that money? It's the economy that lifts all boats. It's the economy that suggests the higher wages. Like in North Dakota, where Walmart is by itself decided to pay $17 an hour to its entry-level workers because the economy is flourishing there. From the natural gas industry, I might add to that. But it's the economy that dictates what people make.
Thank you. Sid, did you want to rebut that?
Agreed that it is not easy to run a business today in today's climate, economic climate. But if, first of all, it's also tough to raise a family when you don't make a livable wage. And we also have to remember that if the residents of an area are not making a livable wage, then they aren't making a wage whereby they can go out and support local businesses either. So I think making a livable wage can spur the economy and could also help grow the economy. And again, I realize that it is tough to run a business in today's world, but again, it's also tough to raise a family.
Melanie, did you want to? No?
I would just say that it sounds like the argument is you can't have it both ways. You know, you can't just say, well, business owners come up with the money and then somehow families are going to do better. Look, I lived it, making $8.50 an hour. It is tough. I know what it's like to have $60 in my purse and figure out how I'm going to get food for my kids for an entire week. I lived that. I know what that's like. But I also know what it's like to band together as a family and have your kids say, Mom, here's half my paycheck so that we can work together. That's how we overcame. That's what our history is all about. It's families banding together, working together, and you overcome. It is not all about forcing other people to cough money out of their pocketbook and say, from you to you. That's not the American way.
Actually, Sid, we're going to move on now.
Okay.
So the next question, I want to come back now to, it's always finances, and what impacts us here in northeastern Pennsylvania so tremendously is Act 47. So let's talk about municipalities. Scranton, Nanticoke, West Hazelton, and Plymouth Township are all fiscally distressed. And as we all know, Scranton has been distressed since 1992. I don't think that anybody thought that Scranton would be distressed that long. House Bill 1773, which overhauls Act 47, was approved this month and sent to the governor for signing. And there are several changes that would impact the implementation of Act 47 in that particular legislation. I won't go into all of those changes. My question to you, and Mel, you answer this one first, is do you feel this legislation is adequate to help distressed cities in northeastern Pennsylvania? And what else do you think Harrisburg could or should do to support cities?
The thing with Act 47 is, since its history, only 7 cities out of 30, 7 out of 30 have found success in reclaiming some financial stability back. Obviously, Scranton is not one of them. And as I said, I alluded to before, I don't understand, to me, it doesn't make any sense for bureaucrats in Harrisburg to say, well, we're going to come up and have a meeting with you and make sure your budget's going okay. It's not working. And I don't think that just because they came up with these revisions, because they're going to hold more stringent, punishments for cities who don't toe the line. To me, it's like a mother who keeps saying, now I told you, number 2, number 3, I told you to get out of that water. Where does this help? Where is the problem lies within the city itself. It's their philosophy on raising taxes, forcing businesses out of the city, forcing residents out of the city. We left West Scranton because we couldn't afford the taxes anymore. Their philosophy is wrong. If they looked at Scranton and said, no, we have to change things here, how about lowering taxes? How about cutting taxes? And instead of saying, oh, by the way, we're going to have cause zones where some businesses don't have to pay taxes, but, oh, these businesses do. No, it has to be even across the board. You lower taxes, bring businesses back in, and then you bring life back into the city. This Act 47, it is clearly not, 7 out of 30 cities in all of its history finding success, it's not working.
Thank you, Melanie. Sid, on to you.
Cities can't go into financially distressed status and stay there like Scranton has for so many, many years. And the recent bill that was passed by the legislature puts a timetable on and almost tells cities, get a move on. Let's start doing something to move towards getting out of financially distressed status. And it allows a raising of the local services tax, which would, in Scranton's case, would raise an extra $5 million, an additional $5 million, to help them out of financially distressed status. And but and it would also prevent the city or financially distressed cities from doing what Scranton tried to do to residents of the 114th legislative district: impose a commuter tax, which is taxation without representation. They arbitrarily imposed this tax, and I would like to say that I led the charge with the League of with the municipalities in the area, and we got together and we defeated this to save thousands of dollars for residents of the 114th District and Northeastern Pennsylvania who work in the city of Scranton. The state needs to help cities, but the state cannot bail cities out. Because if cities declare bankruptcy and the state starts to bail out bankrupt cities, where are we going? And again, only 7 cities coming out. That leaves almost 24 cities still in financially distressed status. If they declare bankruptcy, we have such a financial problem and a revenue problem in the state right now, the Commonwealth can't. It just doesn't have the resources to do it.
Thank you. So let's continue talking about things that impact municipalities, and that is Act 111, which governs the collective bargaining process for our public safety workers, police and firefighters. So related to the distressed cities is this legislation that overhauls the police and firefighters. And the basic objective of these reform bills is to give local governments more leverage in the arbitration process and to open the process to the public. And there are several different provisions that include sharing the cost of arbitration, having evidentiary hearings that are open to the public, excluding post-retirement health care and pension from being subjects of collective bargaining, and requiring arbitrators to analyze the impact of an arbitration award on a municipality's finances and its ability to pay the award. So, Sid, this one goes to you first. What is your position on the proposed reforms to the collective bargaining process?
Well, I think collective bargaining is important, and it's a duty of both sides to sit down at the table and to come together and work out their differences. As we see with the city of Scranton, the pension problems are causing a myriad of troubles for the city, and as a result, it's causing headaches, and it's causing the city to try to pass, as I said, to pass these financial burdens on. Both sides have a duty, and they need to sit down. It needs to be transparent. As you mentioned, the public needs to be aware of what's going on. They need to be open and transparent, these talks. And we need both sides, our unions, our city governments, our municipalities, to work and find a solution and come up with a solution to these pension problems so that we don't have these cities in financially distressed status.
Okay. Thank you. Melanie, the question to you.
I would like to add to that situation that we're talking, this is really happening all over Pennsylvania, is that collective bargaining as a whole is a very unfair advantage for public unions. I would like to see spread across the board union reform where we see not just paycheck protection passed, but we need to see that private unions have the same voice that public unions have. There's a very unequal balance here between local shops who want to stay private, but yet they're using local, and these big unions that are able to do collective bargaining. It's a very unfair advantage, and we need to make sure that smaller businessmen have the same advantages as big unions.
Okay, thank you. So we've talked about public safety unions. Let's now move on. Let's talk about education and some of the impacts there. So let me go back to my last question and see who answered that one. So Sid, you answered that question last. So Melanie, you'll answer this one. So let's talk about pension reform in terms of school districts, and then we can talk about education a little bit more. So school districts around the state are cutting staff and educational services in order to avoid the high pension contribution rates to the Pennsylvania Public School Employee Retirement System, an obligation that was created by the legislature itself. The shortfall is estimated at $50 billion with a B, dollars across the state. How should the legislature address this problem, and is the solution some kind of alteration of pension benefits or in raising taxes? Melanie, goes to you.
Well, you're never going to hear raise taxes come out of my mouth. But I think one of the things that will really help is to have all teachers become, everyone goes into a state healthcare plan. That's one thing that we can do to start reducing the burden. But the other thing is that, as I mentioned before, the cost of education is phenomenal in Pennsylvania. And 50% of our property tax increases in the last year alone, 50% of it are due to the rise in pension costs. I mean, this is a train that is headed off the tracks really fast, and we're going to see a huge accident. We have got to find a way to, look, we have to have pension reform. There's no more waiting. There's no more kicking the can down the road. It has to happen, and hard things have to be said, and hard things have to be done. And, you know, I'm not afraid to say those things. I am a teacher. I love my profession. You know, but we have to be able to say, look, teachers, you gotta give. You have to give. But on the other hand, I want to make sure that, you know, we're using our money wisely. $15,000 a student? This is crazy. Why this is not enough money? To hear that we're firing, letting teachers go, when we're spending for K to 12, one child is over $190,000 for that child to get schooling. That's just K to 12. It's enough money. We have to figure out where that money's going and how we're going to be spending it in a much wiser way.
Okay, Sid, the question to you.
And I would like to thank you for a perfect segue. Speaking of teachers under one healthcare plan, that is a bill that I am working on, legislation that I've been working on in Harrisburg, doing research. Back in 2003, there was a study done that showed that Pennsylvania would save $600 million a year by bringing all of Pennsylvania's teachers under one healthcare plan. In 2014 or 2015, I'm estimating that it may be as much as $1 billion. And this could not only help with property tax on the back end by allowing school districts to save that money, but it could also help with the pension problems. We have to remember that the pension problem started back, and it's the fault of both parties. It started in the Ridge administration, carried over to the Rendell administration, when the stock markets were booming and the pension plans were fully funded, where the state decided to stop putting money into the pension plans. The workers continued to do their fair share and put the money in. The states didn't. Back in 2010, the legislature passed Act 120, which reduced the cost of benefits by 20% and saved the pension systems as much as 60%. But we have pension plans out there now. The Tobash plan, Representative Mike Tobash, which Governor Corbett supports, doesn't do anything to solve the problem any earlier than Act 120 does. And in fact, because it would set up another bureaucracy and force the state to create someone to handle a defined contribution plan as opposed to a defined benefit plan, that would cost another $50 million. So I think we need to give Act 120 a chance to play out, or it certainly isn't the Tobash plan that the governor is supporting right now. But we do need pension. We need to look at our pensions and make sure. And also, we need to fully fund schools. If schools were fully funded and we had an adequate funding program for schools, then we wouldn't have that problem.
Thank you. We're going to keep talking about schools. So Sid, you're going to answer this question first. It seems like every year school districts have to deal with the threat of teacher strikes. Last best offer binding arbitration has been suggested as a means to achieve contracts that are fair to teachers and to the taxpayers. Should lawmakers take action to outlaw strikes in favor of last best offer binding arbitration? Goes to you first.
I don't know if we should outlaw strikes because, again, then if we outlaw strikes, then where do we go? I think both sides have a duty, as I said earlier, to sit down, come to the bargaining table, and work out the problems. If we have to lock them in a room and tell them, settle this problem, I think we need to not hold our children hostage. We need to allow our children to go to school We can't be extending school years indefinitely because of teacher strikes. But again, if we outlaw strikes, then again, we're allowing the school districts and the school boards, if you look at it from another angle, to hold the teachers hostage. We need both sides. They have a duty, and they need to sit down, and they need to come up with a solution in the event of labor problems in school districts. And again, I'm hoping that one healthcare plan would take one of the, when you look at teacher strikes, that's usually one of the problems or labor problems between school boards and school districts and teachers. It's healthcare. And so we need to get that off the table.
Okay. Melanie, the question goes to you.
Well, I think that meetings behind locked doors is the big problem. I think they shouldn't be behind locked doors. People need to, these meetings should be completely public. And yes, I do think that teacher strikes should be outlawed. It is an unfair advantage. They hold one other industry or business in a community, holds an entire community hostage by going on strike. Nobody else has that power. Nobody. And so, yes, we need to outlaw that. Look, I love my profession in many ways. I am a teacher's advocate, but I am not a union advocate. I think the teachers' union is in it for self-preservation. They are not in it to represent teachers or the profession, the art of teaching. And we have to make sure that the communities and parents are not held hostage because negotiations are held behind closed doors. It needs to be public. Their funds need to be made public. We need to know what we're their employers. We're the employers. We need to know what is going on with everything in the schools.
Sid, I know you want another rebuttal, but we said 3 and you used your 3.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to ask one last broad-based question on education, and then we'll move on to another topic because we are running out of time. But in polls, and Melanie, you'll answer this question first. In polls, education ranks as one of voters' top concerns. Reform proposals directed at the classroom include tenure reform and educational standards. So what can we do at the state level, at the legislature of the state? What can we do to make changes to the classroom?
We get out of the classroom. Pure and simple. Bureaucrats do not belong in the classroom, and this is where I'm getting teacher support, because as I'm talking to teachers one at a time, having discussions saying, look, yes, I support charter schools, I support competition in education, but the thing that teachers need is for bureaucrats to get out of your classroom because you know how to do your job. Bureaucrats Janet Napolitano is the creator of Common Core. What does she even know about teaching? Nothing. The people who put Common Core together, and it's been around for many, many years, I've been talking about this for many years, is that bureaucrats put this together, along with some teachers, but they're forcing teachers to use a curriculum in the classroom that is subpar material. You basically put handcuffs on teachers and tell them, now you teach, and then we'll assess the kids on the other end and see if you did a good job. Well, you're assessing kids who aren't learning great material to begin with. We need to take the handcuffs off teachers, let them do their jobs. Teaching is 95% creativity on the spot because you know the kids in your classroom. And when we give the teachers a curriculum in a book and say, now you have to follow this, you take all the art out of teaching. We need to tell teachers, look, just do your job, we're staying out of it.
Thank you. Sid, the question goes to you.
Common Core was adopted by the federal government to have a standard across the country for students and educators. Pennsylvania came up with their own standards, the Pennsylvania Core Standards, and began that this year in March of 2014. But it does not allow our teachers to teach. We are forcing our teachers to prepare for testing. I was talking to someone just yesterday, as a matter of fact. He said in 8th grade, a student has to look at as much as 5 tests in a year. And this person said when his daughter was in 8th grade, she would come home stressed out at night because she had to take a test. Teachers are not being allowed to be creative. Teachers are not allowing to teach. And we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on testing. If we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on funding schools, then we would adequately have our schools funded. Then we would not have teacher strikes because our schools would have the funding, our schools would have the money to allow the teachers to teach. It would allow our students to learn, and our education system would be what it should be. We do have a good public education system, but we've got to have an education system that, once again, I know I'm reiterating and repeating myself, we got to have an education system that allows the teachers to teach our kids subjects, not tests.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I'm going to move on to a couple of questions pertaining to voting, the League of Women Voters, a subject near and dear to my heart, and then we'll move on to closing statements. So the first question pertains to online voter registration. And Sid, you'll answer this question first. Most Pennsylvanians believe that they are already permitted to register to vote online, or to register to vote, not to vote online, but just to do the registration process online. 24 states now permit voters to register online, and online voter registration has proven to provide major cost savings to state and county election agencies and make voter registration data more secure and accurate, increase agency efficiency, make it easier for voters to register and update their registration. So again, this is not about voting online. We're not even touching that one. This is about just registering to vote and making it simple to register to vote. So Sid, what is your position on online voter registration? And if you support it, will you please introduce legislation and get this pushed through?
I think we need, first of all, to educate people regarding registering online as opposed to voting online. And as you said, if it's going to be efficient, and if it's going to be, and I don't want to say safe, but if it's going to be, if it's not going to create voter fraud and it's going to prevent any types of voter fraud, then certainly it's something that we should look into as a legislature, we should look into here in the Commonwealth. We don't have many cases of voter fraud in Pennsylvania, which is one of the reasons why the Supreme Court overturned the Voter ID Act. But again, our voting, if it makes it easier, when you look at the percentage of people who vote here in Pennsylvania and who are registered to vote, I mean, we need people to exercise that right. We need people to get out and vote, and anything we can do to ease the burden of registering and get people to register to vote, as long as it's safe, then I think we should look into it.
Thank you. Melanie, the question to you.
I'm not sure you're going to like my answer.
No, I'm going to like your answer because it's your answer.
I think that back in 2012, when Philadelphia had a 100% voter rate, I think that was a clue we might have some voter fraud in Pennsylvania. And I do think that, and I just read a story right on the way over here, I was reading the news, and a congressional candidate in Illinois just went to do his early voting, and they have electronic machines, so he got to the end to do his review, and his own vote went to his Democratic opponent. The machine transferred all of his votes that went to all Republican votes, candidates, and at the end, they were all designated to the Democratic candidates. I'm not saying I would not say this is a good idea, but I think that when there's no paper trail to go back and say, listen, we have a record, we can see the handwriting, we can see who signed this or who didn't sign it. When there's no paper trail, it's very easy to imagine that there would be massive voter fraud. I mean, we already saw it in Philadelphia. So I'm a little leery of saying, yes, anything online, let's go ahead and do it, because there are too many ways that I can see this going awry.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about voting online, only registering to vote. Okay, all right. Okay. Unfortunately, I have many other questions pertaining to voting and many other subjects, but we are out of time this evening. So we will move on to closing statements. And again, we drew the X for who would give the first closing statement first, and that will be Sid. So Sid, you now have 2 minutes to give your closing statement.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and my opponent for this opportunity, because really it's important for the constituency and the voters to get a chance to hear our positions and get to know the candidates, because it's so important, as I just mentioned, to get out and vote on Election Day. When I ran for the first time in 2010, I realized that my entire career, professional career, was the three things that you never win an argument about: sports, religion, and politics. But I can say, and I tell my children this all the time, if you can go through your entire professional career and get up every day and love the job that you do, then be thankful, because not many people can say they enjoy their job. And when we went to an orientation as new elected officials, we were told, consider yourself on the job 24 hours a day. And as an elected official, you are. No matter where you go, if you go to the movies, if you go to church, if you go to the mall, wherever you are, people come up to you, and the favorite thing they say is, I hate to bother you when you're on your own time, but, well, as a legislator, it's not your own time, it's the constituents' time, because the electorate is the people that they put you in office, and it is their time. And I'd like to say that for the past 4 years, we have had a Republican governor, and both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, have been Republican-controlled. In a total majority, very few things have gotten done. We have handed out billions in tax breaks, yet we rank last in job creation, a study that just came out recently said. We've got to turn things around in Harrisburg, and I feel that we need a chance to turn things around in the makeup of our legislature. I'm working on bills that would save the Commonwealth potentially billions of dollars, protect our children. I have a bill that I'm working on that would require mandatory lockdown drills for our children to keep them safe. I led the charge to defeat the commuter tax, saving our people of the 114th district much money. I kept my campaign promises. I don't take a COLA, I don't take per diems, and I just want to say that I feel I deserve to go back to Harrisburg and continue the work that I started, but it's most important, please get out and vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid Kavulich. And Melanie, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
So I alluded before, to our great tragedy in 2010, and we lost everything but our cars. And when that happened, as we did everything that we were supposed to be doing, we were paying our mortgage off for 15 years instead of 30, paying all our bills on time, great credit rating, blah, blah, blah. The day we were pulling out, we learned that from our lawyer that was helping us through this process that, oh, by the way, there's a guy down your street who hasn't been paying his mortgage for 2 years, and he was still in his house. I was really, really angry, because I had to rip my 6 kids out of their home and go across the state, leave our friends and our family. And it was so hard for me to have to go through that. And it made me determined that in whatever way I could, I was going to be in the middle of the fight, because what I saw was power being taken away, being taken from Washington, D.C., away from our state capital. And I wanted, like any other crazy Italian woman, I can't sit still and I can't shut up, and I gotta be in the fight. And to me, this was the best way that I knew how to fight for the future that my 6 kids need in Pennsylvania. I want them to stay here. I want them to have good paying jobs here. I want to see my grandchildren grow up whenever I have them. I want them to be here. And I want to make sure that I'm in the middle of that, making sure that Pennsylvania stays Pennsylvania, that we keep Washington, D.C. at bay. Because to me, the federal and our state constitution are the guiding lights that we have. And we are so dangerously close to losing our First and our Second Amendment rights in Pennsylvania. And I am going to fight to make sure they do not leave us. The Constitution means something. Both our federal and state, beautiful documents. I talked about my rudder before in the first question in regards to ethics. They guide our ethics. And I will be a legislator who will look to the Constitution and say, is that allowable? Does that rob anyone of our freedoms here in Pennsylvania? Because liberty means something to me. And I know liberty means something too, because liberty is home ownership. Liberty is owning your own business. Liberty is having employees and paying them good paying jobs if the economy supports it. And liberty makes a good paying economy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Melanie. Again, I want to thank our candidates this evening for their commitment to democracy. It takes a lot to run for public office. It takes a lot of commitment, and we really appreciate that. Again, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We have a couple of other debates coming up, including a debate with the candidates for the 22nd Senatorial District. You can see us on ECTV and on LWVLackawanna.org, and tune into ECTV on election night for live election night returns with me and my partner Dave Wenzel. It's always an interesting evening. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and we appreciate you.
Hey, nice job.
Thank you very much.
Well-run debate. That
Thank
was
you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.